Cutscenes are really important when wanting to make your game much more personalized and entertaining. Cutscenes give your game a story, and today I want to go over how to create cutscenes in Godot 4, just like the one you see on screen now. But let's get started and go over how to create this step by step. Also quickly, before we get started, if you can go down below, hit the subscribe button and drop a like on this video, then it would mean the absolute world so YouTube can push this video to more aspiring game developers. But let's go over how to create cutscenes in Godot. So before we get started with the actual cutscene, we're going to have to do a tiny bit of setup work. And to do this, we're going to create the new world by creating a new scene. And we're going to name this scene World 2 with a 2D node. We're going to create another 2D node. And this is going to be where the actual World 2 scene is. So we'll say World 2 main because that's going to be the actual World 2 scene. And then we're going to create another node 2D. And this is going to be for our World 2 cutscene. So this is going to be our World 2 cutscene. And this is going to be our, I guess we can make it more exact and say World 2 opening cutscene because this is going to be the opening cutscene whenever we first enter the scene for the very first time. We want to show that, you know, it's a new area and kind of what the area has to offer. But we're going to create our World 2 just like we would create any other world. So I'm going to take the tile map from our main world and I'm going to come paste it into our World 2 scene just so we can create a new little world down here and we can have it lined up perfectly just like it, you know, would be if we were to create it. And then we'll instance this into the actual world here in just a minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these tiles and we're going to draw down here, but I want to remove this row here just so we know, right? Just so we know that this line is part of world 1. This is part of world 1. So we don't want to draw on this line, but we want to draw all down here. And I don't want to do this on layer 3 because that's not what that's for. But we're going to go here and then we can just start going and we can start drawing and we can start creating our map. And I'm going to do this in the time lapse just so it's quicker, but I'll be right back in just a second. Okay, so now that we've created the little, this is the World 2, so this is going to be the new area. I'm going to go and I'm going to completely remove everything else that we have here located within the rest of the tile map up here in the top. And then we're going to instance this into our world and we're going to see that it lines up perfect. Then all we have to do real quickly is just fix collision shapes and everything, and then we'll be good to go and we will be good to completely start this tutorial. So once we just remove all of that, this is going to be World 2. This is going to be our complete World 2 here. And it looks very, very nice, right? So this is our new area. We're going to save the scene. We'll save the scene into our scenes folder and we'll name this World 2 scene. And then we will go to our world. We can instance this scene into our world and you can kind of see that it lines up completely perfect. But we cannot enter this area because of this collision shape. And I'm going to fix that real quick by just going up here, deleting this polygon 2D, this collision polygon, and creating a brand new collision polygon and just tracing out the world quickly once again. And I'll do this in time lapse because this is going to take just a minute. Now that our collisions are completely fixed, we're going to be able to walk around the world, but if we play, we can see that everything is going to work just fine. But when we come down here, you can kind of see that our camera does not work. Our player goes down there, but our camera does not work because our camera has a limit that doesn't allow us to go past into this area. So one more fix, and this is the last fix before the cutscene actually starts. We'll go into our player, we'll go into our camera, and we got to change this bottom limit. So if we go to our world, we can add something like maybe a collision shape, and then we can make a basic circle for this collision shape. We can save it and go into the world. We can find this collision shape. We can drag this collision shape all the way down here to the very, 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 very bottom where we want the camera to stop. We can throw this here. We can see the transform. We can see that it's going to be at Y719. So we're going to take this position of this exact area. We'll delete the collision shape now. We want this exact area. We'll go into our player. We'll go to the camera 2D and we will change the bottom here to 719. And you're going to see that if we play now, we have a new little area attached to our world. but this area is already, you know, opened up and it's ready for the player, and that's not what we want. We want it to be kind of faded out. When the player walks in, then we want to play an animation. So now that the setup part of this tutorial is finished, then we can start the actual cutscene. So now let's start the actual cutscene. So we're gonna go into our world 2, and then we're going to take this tile map here and we're gonna paste it into our cutscene, because this is gonna be the finished product. This is what we want the cutscene. In the cutscene, we're gonna want to show this. So we can say that this is gonna be the tile map finished, right? And then we can copy this tile map here, because we're gonna need 2 different scenes. We're gonna need one with these trees, and then we're gonna need one without these trees. And this one right here is gonna be the one without these trees, because we're gonna rename this to be the unfinished version of the tile map, right? So this is the unfinished version, which is the one that we're going to show first, and the finished tile map is going to be hidden until we change it, you know, after we play the smoke effect. So the tile map unfinished, we're going to go in and we're going to just remove these trees here, right? And that's going to look good, right? So now we can basically switch it back and forth to have trees, to not have trees, to have trees, to not have trees, to not have trees, to not have trees. And we also want this world 2 main here to be hidden, because we want this one. This is our cutscene scene, and then this is going to be our main scene. So once the cutscene's over, this is going to be hidden. Nothing in here matters anymore, because this is what matters. This is going to be our actual scene. So this is going to be hidden for now, because we don't want this to happen until the cutscene has finished. And to start with this cutscene, let's add a little fade. So we're going to add a color rect. We're going to make this color rect black, and then we're going to change the value to 200. And then we can take this color rect, it's going to be way up here, and we can kind of drag it over, and you can kind of see how it makes a fade over the world. We want to make sure it's at the exact point up top. The sides don't really matter as much, just the top. We want to make sure that is exact, because that's going to overlay onto the world 1, right? But we'll get all the sides perfectly exact, just like that. And then we're going to create an animation player inside of our cutscene area, and we're going to create a new animation. We're going to name this animation cover fade, and then we can make this like 1.5 seconds, so it's a little bit longer and it's not as short. We can add a track. We can add a property track to our color rect, and we can control the color. We can go to our color rect, and we can paste, or we can key this frame so it starts off as this color, because that's what we want it to start off as. And then we're going to go to the very end. We're going to key this frame as well, and we can go into our animation player down here. We can change this around. We can change the A value to nothing or to 0, and if we look at it in the animation, you can kind of see how it makes a nice fade just like that. Maybe we can make it 2 seconds. We can make it a little bit longer. We can drag this all the way out to 2, and you can kind of see how it goes a lot longer and a lot smoother now, right? So that's going to be our cover fade animation, and that works, and that is our little first part of the cutscene. That's our fade. Okay, so now we're going to need a player detection area. So in our cutscene, we're going to add a area 2D, and this is going to be our player detection. So we're able to see if the player has entered the area for the first time, when the player is entering in the area, and basically whenever the player is entering world 2. So we can say our player detection, and player detection, all we're going to need here is a collision shape 2D. We can make this into a square. This is going to be very simple, and then we can just put it across the entrance here. So whenever the player enters it, it's going to signal to the, we can put it a little bit above as well. So whenever the player enters this area, then it's going to start the cutscene. That's what's actually going to start the cutscene. If we go up to our world 2, the very top, we can create a new script, and in this script, this is where we're going to make all the code for world 2. And in world 2, we're going to start off by creating a onReady variable. And this onReady var is just going to be our animation player, and it's going to be equal to our, well, we're going to have to get our world 2 scene animation player. So that's just going to be equal to our animation player. Then let's create another variable, and this first variable is going to be is our opening scene, or we'll say opening cut scene. I don't know why I cannot spell, but opening cut scene. Basically, it's going to start off as false, because when we start the game, it doesn't want to be started until the player enters. Once the player enters the area, then we're going to start the opening cutscene, so we'll change that to true. And then we want to say another variable for has the player been in the area. So basically, has the player entered area. So if the player has entered the area before, then that's going to be equal to true. It's going to start off as false, because we don't want the player to have entered the area before the game starts. And then player equals null, because we don't know who the player is until we have this player detection function, right? So we can go to our node, we can say body entered, and we can send this to our world. And basically on body entered, this is where we're going to change the player variable. We're going to set it to true. So we can say if body dot has method player, then we're going to want player to equal body. And I'll show you why this works here in just a second. And then we're going to say if the player has not entered, so make sure you have the little exclamation mark, if player has not entered the area. So if the player has not entered the area, then we want the player to has entered the area, because then it's entered the area. And if it's the first time, that means then this is not equal to true. So that means this is the first time the player is entering the area. So we can call cutscene, I don't know why I cannot spell, cutscene opening, because it's going to be our cutscene opening function. And we can go down here and we can create a new function, which is going to be our cutscene opening function. And in this function, we're going to go through a bunch of different stuff. So this is where we're going to actually start the cutscene. And why this works up here is because we're going to first, whenever a body enters, it's going to check if that body has the method player. And the only thing in our entire game that has the method player is our player, right? So it's going to say, okay, that's our player. And then what it's going to do is it's going to set our player right here, our node, our variable, to equal whatever body just entered. If it's the player, then it's going to be the player, right? So the player is going to equal the player now. And we know what the player is, and we can access the player's camera, and we can access other stuff, right? So then we're going to say if the player has not entered the area. If the player has not entered the area, that means it's its first time. So we're going to say it's entered the area now, and we're going to start the cutscene. This is where we're going to start the cutscene. And when we first start the cutscene, well, we're going to want to play our fade animation, because that's the very first thing. And then we're also going to want to start the cutscene. So we'll say opening cutscene is going to be equal to true now. And we can play our animation here. So we can say animation player dot play, and then cover fade, which is the animation we just created. And then we can get our player's camera, and we want to make it enabled false, because in a minute, we're going to want to enable our own camera. So we can say player.camera, which we don't have, so we're going to have to go and create. Or we have a camera, but we do not have a variable for it, so we can't access it. So enable equals false. And then here is where we're going to, enable our own camera for this scene. But our player camera, if we want to fix this is going to give us an error because we don't have a variable inside of our player. And to fix this, we can just say an onReady var camera equals camera 2D, just like that. And now we have access to our player's camera. And then we don't have our own camera, so this is not going to work. But if we play the game, you're going to see that if we come down here, then it's going to work. But we don't have a camera, so the fade works. But it just goes here because we're not active on any camera now because we just disabled the player's camera. So now we want to switch that to the camera of our world too, because we're going to have a camera, and this camera is going to be on our path follow because it's going to follow a path, so it has a little animation as it goes. So we're going to say path 2D, and on our path 2D, we're going to add a path follow. And on our path follow, that's where we're going to have the camera, right? And we're going to set up our path by going to our 2D. We can click on path. We can come over here to inspector. We can click on the curve. And then we can say points, and then we can add an element. And it's going to add an element up here. Where do we want the camera to start? Well, we're going to want the camera to start right here at the very beginning. And then we can add another element. And you can kind of see that it's going to create this path, right? And where do we want the camera to come first? Well, maybe we want it to come here. And then maybe we want it to come more out here into the woods. And then maybe we want it to come down here. And we just kind of want it to be in the woods kind of for as long as possible, right? And then we want it to maybe come across, and this is where it's going to hit all of our trees, right? And it's going to line up with these trees perfectly. Maybe we want this to come more of an angle, so we want this one to come out like this more, and we want this one to come in more. And then we want this to cut across perfectly just like this. Maybe we can move this one in to there. And then we can have this come like up here into the dirt, and then it's going to end the cutscene and it's going to go back to our player's camera. And then our camera here, you're going to see it's a massive camera. So if we go to zoom, we zoom this into like 6, you're going to see that's a much smaller camera there, and that's going to look good, and it's going to follow this path. If we go to our path follow 2D and we move this progress ratio up, you can kind of see how it follows, and you can see the path that our camera is going to take, right? So how are we going to implement this into the code? Well, if we go into our world, or if we go into our script, we're going to have to create a new variable so we can access our camera. So we're going to say at onReadyVar camera equals world to opening scene and camera 2D, right? So it's going to be path 2D, path follow, and then our camera. That's how long it's going to take to access our camera, right? And then we're going to have another variable, and this variable is going to be variable is path following, and this path following variable is going to be for our path follow. So if we want the path to start following, then we're going to say true, and if we do not want the path to start following, then we're going to say that this is going to be equal to false, right? And on the start, we don't want it to follow because we don't want it to follow until the cutscene starts. So now if we go down here into our cutscene opening, we can actually change our camera and we can enable our camera. So we can say camera dot enabled equals true. So now our camera is enabled in the world too. And then we can set is path following to equal to true. So now in our physics process, it's going to play our path following. So if we go up here and we create a new function, we're going to create a physics process function, and inside of our physics process function, well, we're going to say if is the opening cutscene. So if we're inside of our opening cutscene and our opening cutscene is going, well, we're going to want to just quickly make another variable, and this variable is going to be for our path follower, so we can change the progress ratio so we can actually move it along its path. We can just say path follower equals world to cutscene, and it's going to be our path 2D path follower, just like this. And if we go down here and we say if is path following, so down here once we start, we're going to say path following is equal to true. So if path following, if we are path following, then we want our path follower, which is the variable we just made, which is our path follow, which has the camera attached, dot progress ratio on it to plus equal 0.001, because it's going to be very small, because progress ratio only goes up to 1. Once it hits 1, it's over. That's as far as it goes. And then to end our cutscene, we can come down here and we can say if path follower dot progress ratio is equal to anything above, like we'll do 9.8 or 0.98. Right? If it's equal to anything above this, then it's going to be over, because usually it's never going to equal exactly 1 because it's going to restart unless we go over here and we say loop to equal off, which we could do that. So we can just say if, I guess we'll just do that. So we'll say greater than or equal to 1 just to make it easier. So if the path follow dot progress ratio equals 1, which means it's at its very end, right? Once it gets to here, that means it's at 1, and that means we're going to stop, right? So that means we're going to want to call the ending of our cutscene, and we can just say something like, well, we wanted to call the cutscene ending, right? Or the cutscene closing, and this cutscene is going to be a non-existent cutscene. So if we come down here and we create a new one, right? I just typed somewhere and I don't know where I typed, but if we come down here and we say function cutscene ending, this cutscene is going to be the ending, and in this cutscene we want is path following to be equal to false. I'm going to explain more in depth how this works here in just a second. And then we want our is opening cutscene to equal to false, and then we also want our camera dot enabled to equal to false, and we want our player's camera to be equal to true again, and then we want our world to opening cut scene. I don't know why it's taking so long to type, but cut scene to dot visible to be equal to false, and then we want our world to main dot visible to be equal to true. right? So now we're going to actually show the actual World 2 scene before our player is able to walk into it. And then this theoretically should work. So now we should path follow. The progress ratio should go up. The camera should follow it. And theoretically, we're going to play the fade. So first we're going to play the fade. And then once we play the fade, we're going to start the progress. And the camera is going to follow it because we switched the cameras here. And it's going to go all the way until it hits 1. Once it hits 1, then we're going to call the cutscene ending. And the cutscene ending is going to end the cutscene and give us control back to the player. And then after this, we're going to have the camera stop, right? So we'll play it real quick and we'll show that it works. But once we play, you can kind of see that the camera's going to follow the path 2D. And we can hide this in just a second. But you can kind of see how it's going to follow it. Just like this. And then it's going to come down here. It's going to go here. We want it to pause right here. So we'll do that here in just a second. We'll have it pause there for a second. But then you can kind of see that it gives our player back control. And that's good. So if we go to our World 2D, we go to the 2D area. We go to our path follow. We drag the progress ratio along. And we get to the point where we want it to stop. So we can say maybe 0.78. That's probably a good stopping point. We want it to stop at 0.78, right? So somewhere around 0.78, we want it to stop. So to do this, we'll go into our script. And we're going to have 2 more variables up here. Because this is going to be for our smoke here in just a second. But we're going to need it for the function that we're going to create now. So if smoke has happened equals false. Then we're going to have var smoke is happening equals false. So we're going to have a variable for smoke has happened. So if it's already happened. And we're going to have a variable for if it is currently happening, right? So if we go down here into our path follow, we're going to create under this another if statement. And this if statement is going to be a little bit more in depth. And it's going to be the smoke effect. So we'll say if basically not the smoke effect. So if the smoke effect has happened is equal to false. And our path follower dot progress ratio is greater than or equal to, what number do we say? I think it was 7.8 is equal to that or greater. And the smoke, right? And the smoke is happening, and the smoke is not happening, because if it is happening, we don't want to keep playing this. But if the smoke is happening, then we want smoke. Okay, I'll explain this in a second because it's going to be kind of long. Is happening equals true. And then we're going to say, right here, we're going to, in a minute, we're going to toggle the smoke to come on, which we haven't created yet, so we can't do it yet. And then we're going to have a timer. We're going to say await.getTree, and we're going to create a short timer. And this timer is going to be a create timer. And it's going to be a 1-second timer here. And we're going to say timeout. Once we time out, we're going to want to change the world. So we're going to say world 2. And we're going to get our tile map unfinished. Or we're going to say tile map finished dot visible is it going to be equal to true. And I'll explain how this works here in just a second. But world 2 opening cut scene tile map unfinished is going to be dot visible equals false. So basically there we're going to switch and we're going to make the trees visible. Once that happens, then we're going to want to toggle the smoke again, and we're going to want to set another timer, so we give the smoke a little bit of time to clear out. We'll say get tree dot create timer, and this time it will be a little bit shorter. We'll do like 0.5 dot timeout. And then after this, well, we're going to want to say that our smoke has happened equals true, and smoke is happening is no longer equal to true. So we'll say smoke has happened equals true because it just finished happening, and smoke is happening is going to be equal to false because it is no longer happening, right? And well, now we're going to have a smoke effect that works. We're going to have everything that is going to work except the smoke, because it's going to pause now. It should pause because we go. And let me kind of explain how this works real quick. So we're going to come in here to the is path following, and it's going to say, well, we're going to actually have to check if smoke is happening. That's what that variable's for. So we're going to say if not smoke is happening. Then if the smoke's not happening, then we want path follower.progress. So if the smoke is happening, we want to be paused, right? We don't want to be moving. So basically we're going to check if the smoke is happening. So if the smoke is currently happening, if the smoke is in the middle of happening, then we're going to want to follow, if the smoke is not happening, then we're going to want the camera to move along the progress ratio. And if the smoke hasn't already happened, if the path follower ratio is above this, which means it's at the point where we want it to stop, and the smoke is not currently happening, then we're going to want to play this function. And this function is going to turn our smoke is happening equals to true. So we can't keep playing this function over and over and over. And it's going to change it to true, so we stop, right? So we're no longer moving. And then we're going to toggle the smoke. We're going to set a timer 1 minute so the smoke has time to fill up the area before we switch the scenes. And then we're going to toggle the smoke again, and we're going to give it more time to clear out. And then we're going to set it to true again, so that the moment this is set to true, the moment this is set to false again, because smoke is no longer happening. So the moment this is set to false, this is going to start moving the camera again, then it's going to go, and it's going to end the cutscene just like it did the other time. So if we play the scene, well, it should hopefully work, right? So if we come down here and we enter, you can see that it doesn't work, and that is an issue. So let's see why it doesn't work. Maybe if we go to our 2D world 2D, you can kind of see our progress ratio is already set here, so it's going to start there, which is not good. But if we go to our world and we play, if we reset the progress ratio to where it starts at 0, you can kind of see that it's going to play the entire thing. It's going to fade away. It's going to go on the correct track that we need it to go on. It's going to come all the way down. It should hopefully pause right where we want it to pause. And it does. It pauses for a good time. It shows the trees. And it's going to keep going. And it's going to switch us back control of our player. And the trees are now going to be visible. So that works, right? That is very, 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 very good. But we have no smoke effect. And you see this line here, our path follow. We can go to our path 2D. Come down here to our visibility. We can change the modulate to nothing. And that's going to fix that. Now it is invisible. Now we can't see it. But now we need to create a smoked effect. So first of all, we're going to have to bring in this art, and it's called the smoke particle. So you're going to have to import this into the art folder, which is, there is a link in the description to an itch.io page where you can find all the art for this game. And that's where the smoke particle is going to be located. But to create these smoke particles, we're going to be going to our opening cutscene here. We're going to be using a GPU particle. So we're going to be using a GPU particle, and we're going to be creating particles here, and we're going to rename this to smoke particles 1, because this is going to be smoke particles 1. We're going to assign the texture. We're going to load the texture. We're going to obviously use the art piece that we just imported, which is the smoke particle. And for the amount, we're going to need a lot, because this is going to be a pretty big, it's going to be like smoke, right? So maybe not 1,000, maybe like 800, not 80, but like 800, just like this. We're going to want to make sure that emitting is turned off for now, or I guess we can turn it on for now, but in a minute we're going to have to turn it off, but we just need it on just for now so we can figure out how we want it to look, right? So whenever we have 800 amount, we have process material needs to be a particle process. Texture is going to be equal to our texture. So we click on this particle process, and it's going to bring up a bunch of different stuff. What we need first is we need to change the gravity. The gravity cannot be equal to 98. We're going to equal it to 0. And 0 is going to basically all be here in the middle. And then we're going to want to change our direction, or within our direction, we're going to want to change the spread, do it a lot higher. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to change this, how it spreads the particles out, so it's going to be able to go into a circle. And that's what we're going to change our linear XL for. We can change like the minimum to 50, and then maybe the maximum to 100. But we want to go, and we actually want to go into our initial velocity here. And if we change this, not much, just 1, you're going to see that it makes this. And if we change the max, so it has a little bit of different in there, I guess you can kind of see how far that goes out. We do not want it to be going far out, so we'll put the max at like 2. We'll put the minimum at like 1. and it looks kind of weird. And the reason it looks so weird is because in our particle flags we have to disable Y. And you can kind of see how that's going to make it look more like a smoke texture. That's going to all kind of make it, we can rotate it Y, and that's going to make it look more dense in the middle. If we rotate it Z, you're going to kind of see that it's going to rotate in the Z way, and it's going to look kind of funky. This looks good though. This looks like smoke. It's going to cover up the tree right there in the center. So I like this right here a lot. And then if we make our tile map finished visible and we hide our tile map unfinished, we can kind of see where these smoke particles need to go. And you see that this one needs to go right there. And then we can take this smoke particle, we can copy it, and we can paste it, and it's going to be smoke particle 2. We can drag it just a little bit to cover up this tree. We can take smoke particle 2, we can paste it, we can drag it to this tree. We can take smoke particle 3, we can paste it, and then we can drag it on just a little bit to the final tree, which is going to be right here. And then we want to go to our smoke particle 1. We're going to want to change emitting to off, emitting to off, emitting to off, and emitting to off on all of our smoke particles, just like this. Now, if we go into the script, we're going to have to make a toggle function for our toggle smoke up here. So we can say something like toggle smoke. When we call this function up here, we can say toggle smoke again. And then we can come down here and we can actually create this function. We'll say function toggle smoke. And in our toggle smoke function, we're going to have to create a couple variables. And these variables are going to be, first of all, var1, well, var smoke 1. In smoke, var smoke 1 is going to be equal to our world. And it's going to be equal to our cutscene, and it's going to be equal to our smoke particles 1. Then we can kind of copy this variable, because these are going to be kind of copy paste variables here for them. And we can come down and we can change up these variables to 2, to smoke 3, and to smoke 4. Then we can come all the way to the end over here. We can change this to 4, 3, and 2, right? So that's 4 different variables. And basically what we want to do when we toggle smoke, we want smoke 1 to equal the opposite of what smoke 1 already is. So we can say smoke 1 dot emitting is going to equal the, false version of smoke 1 dot emitting. So it's going to pick the opposite. Smoke 2 dot emitting is going to equal the opposite smoke 2 dot emitting. And then we can kind of go on all the way down the line. And once again, you can copy and paste these as well. And we can say 3 and 4. Here we can say 4, 3, and 4. Now, theoretically, if we play the game, our smoke should work. We have something toggle. Okay, we spelled it wrong down here. So toggle smoke. Now everything should work. So if we go to our world, we click play. Kind of see that everything's going to look the same in the beginning. We're going to come down here. We walk into the area. It's going to start the cutscene. And we should have no smoke when we get down to the bottom. The trees are already going to be visible, but that's because we messed up the tile map when we left it visible. It plays smoke, it turns off smoke, and it keeps going. Okay, so that works. The only thing that we don't have working is if we go to world 2, we go to the tile map finish. We need the tile map finished to be equal to visible and the unfinished to be equal to visible, like we had it before. The only reason we changed it was so we could see where to put the smoke at. But now if we play the game, you're going to see that we can come down here, we walk into the zone, and it's going to play the area. It's going to go in and it's going to show everything in our cutscene, and it's going to cut across. It should play the smoke, and the trees are going to appear now. That looks very good, right? So smoke particles are working. The entire cutscene is working. We come down here, the trees are there, and everything looks very nice. So that is how you create cutscenes in Godot. I really, really, really hope this video helped. And if it did, then please go down below, hit the subscribe button, drop a like. Let me know what helped and what, if something did not help or something was confusing, let me know that in the comments as well, so I can improve for the next time. And I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope that this series is being useful. I hope this entire series is helping. This is episode 9, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff that the survival series has taught, and I really, really do like it. So if you have anything else that you think would go with the survival series and make it even better, then let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching. I really do hope this video helped. And until next time, stay safe and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.